everybody. Welcome to another edition of PoCommunity. I'm Mike Arboit, and I'm sitting here with Estephania Solis. How's it going?
Hi, pretty good. And yourself?
Pretty good, you
How's
know.
everyone?
Estefania is a member here at the Fountainhead. Love having her here. She's just awesome personality, awesome person. So, tell me what you do, though. Tell me what you do for your business, what you do for work.
Sure. Okay. So for work, I am an integration coach for altered states of consciousness, and it's all fully remote. It's all online. The company's based in the US, so I kind of get to work on that front. And then outside of that, I'm looking to build my business as a expressive arts therapy, but I would gear it more towards coaching. Due to the pandemic, I was starting to do workshops and do everything in person, but now I'm seeing how I can shift that online, basically.
That's wicked. So, how did you get involved in this industry when it comes to just where it's a different kind of industry to get into, right?
Yes, yes, definitely. It's kind of weird. The more I involve myself in certain things, it's kind of like if you've heard that adage, like it's like they come find you. You don't really go searching for them.
Yeah.
And for an odd reason or another, altered states of consciousness have always been like spirituality has always been a big factor in my life. And I think that just kind of started from my own upbringing. So I was raised, I mean, if we're going to get like deep down and personal here, nitty gritty, I grew up Catholic. So, like, definitely Catholic school practicing. I mean, I knew they had us like remember all the prayers and the rituals and everything, like in Spanish and English. And I was always I knew that there was something there, but I couldn't find the substance for it. Like it just couldn't apply it for my life somehow. And I don't know if it was because it's even though I found community, I wasn't connected to source, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so throughout my life, I tried looking for that in different avenues, like whether that was like in other spiritual practices, and then through, trying certain psychedelic drugs and just kind of going through that avenue. I was always trying to connect to something deeper than just myself. So I almost felt like I was almost in a daze for a while in my life. And it just so happened that I would always go back to like meditation, but like that meditation, as simple as like even in Catholicism, there's usually where you hold mass and everything, and then right next to it, there's the I don't know how to call it in English, but in Spanish it's capilla, and that's where they hold the Holy Spirit, like the offering. And even just like going in that and not having any outside influence and knowing that I could like directly set my whatever, whether it was a prayer or a question, I could just have direct connection with that. I think that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And then eventually through like trial and error of life, I like forgot about a lot of this. I lived life. I mean, I definitely lived life to the fullest, party, did what I, like kind of just ventured into like just being like, all right, if this is going to be it for life, then I'm just going to enjoy. And I did that, but I always felt like quite empty
Yeah.
in that. And somehow or another, I just ended up looping back to what I practice now. So that would be Buddhism. And I mean, there's like still a connection with, like my past, of course, like it's still there.
Yeah.
There's certain traditions that I hold. But for me, that sense of being mindful and just being aware of, there is something that I can connect to outside of, like outside of people, outside of this world and the rituals that we create um, to feel connected. I can still go back to that connection point. So that kind of was always in the background for me, and spirituality has always been a part of my it's always been in my awareness, shall we say it like that. um and then I lived life. I went and had other jobs. um Eventually I made it to Canada. as my family says, like, are you going all the way north? Like, what are you thinking of going to Alaska? What's going on? But anyway, I ended up here, and um, yeah, I kind of explored. I don't know if it was because I was changing countries. Like, even though I'm coming from Mexico, US, being in the US, like, that still feels like there's a connection there. I feel like there's a I would say an adequate representation of Mexican people. So I'm still connected very much to like culture, language, food. Like, I don't feel so alone in that sense, so to speak. And when I came here, it really was a shift for me in terms of um, just belonging, in belonging of, like, sharing meals, of like understanding certain social norms.
Yeah.
And it took me a while. Like, I was very culture shocked in a sense, and I was like, that, but why? Like, we speak the same language and everything, like,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
should match. And then that kind of just, amongst other things, like, I think just through life, like, I was, relationships, work, having to like now figure out like how to be in this country, how to, basically like work under certain restrictions with my permit, then also like study because that's what I was here to do, and then outside of that, like, try to live. So it was always like, okay, how do I balance survival mode and then still trying to like flourish somehow
Mhm.
and build something for myself? So, needless to say, that created a very in-depth journey into just myself, and what I was like looking to, like, just basically like the hero's journey, if that makes sense, where you kind of, you have to go deep and like break down some of those walls,
Yeah.
and then you have to like come back out and be like, okay, I survived that. What's next?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, I went in. I basically was like at a point where I was like, all right, this is it. Like, I don't think I can do this. It's too much. I'm over here by myself. Most of my family still like, what are you doing? Are you crazy? And at this point, I'm like, yeah, I think so. Like, there is a part of me that just like, it's the fighter in me, I think, where it's like, well, I want to see better opportunities, and I want to know that I can, at least in my lifetime, I tried, rather than like always looking back and be like, oh, I should have, or, like, if only. And I never want to ask those questions, so I try the best that I can. And in that, I kind of, for one reason or another, got connected to the program that I studied here, which is expressive arts therapy.
Yeah.
And then from there, I really, I think also it was like a selfish thing where I was like, okay, you know what? I invested in this, so I'm just gonna go all in and really just explore. And I did, and it was really interesting to have the time to just break down a lot of those walls and those preconceptions of what I'm supposed to be doing. I think, especially, I speak for myself, but I also see it in younger generations now. There's like a lot of pressure from the beginning, to just from the get go. Like, you need to know where you're supposed to be going, how you're gonna get there. Like, and life doesn't happen that way. Like,
Not at
ha-
all.
you're right.
I don't. I'm 30, almost 34 years old, and I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I
Right.
don't think I ever know, and you shouldn't. I think humans are supposed to evolve into like there's when they get good at something, they try something else or like a new branch off of that, where it's just like they continue to evolve into something bigger. And I think past generations have been really just stuck in the one way or the highway. Like you have to do it this way. If you have a family, you have to just get like a cushy job that pays the bills, has benefits, all the things that you'd want, but except you're depressed as hell when you go home and you just hate everything. I think there's like a new just like movement of people that just like, and COVID has a lot to do with it. I think within the last 2 years, where people are just like, okay, I got
Hmm.
laid off, or I don't want to work for little money during this time, for like risking my life or whatever, however you think about it. But like they are just it's a time where they could basically try what they're passionate about and finally like go 2 feet in the water and just try it and do it. And the amount of people I've seen like basically start small businesses or just side hustles while this pandemic's been going on, because it basically are like, what's there to lose? That was needed in a way where more people did that, because it, as you know, it's not easy kind of doing your own thing. It's much
No.
easier doing something for a boss or something where it's just a 9 to 5. Like it's easier in a way where it's just, you know, what your kind of what your day is going to be like, more so than doing everything yourself, thinking about it 24/7. It's pretty rough, and you know, like
It is.
it's
Yeah.
extremely rough. And how long have you lived up here now?
Oh gosh. I'm going for 6 years now.
6 years. But like almost 2 of those years, if you were saying you felt a little bit of like away from your like home and away from people and your comfort zone, and the last 2 years, I know people that have moved to this country in the last since the pandemic happened, where you're not supposed to meet people or see people, like how lonely those people feel, right? And so the profession that what you went to school for and what you love is like, you said, like expressive arts, right?
Yes.
That I could see being a really good emotional like release when it
Correct.
comes to anybody going through like just like any kind of mental health, like just mental health problems, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I
yeah,
think you put it quite well when you like I always hated that question when they would ask you in school. They're like, "What do you see yourself doing in 10 years?" I'm like, "I don't know, okay? I'm
yeah,
10." So
yeah,
how am I supposed to know?
yeah, yeah,
And so essentially that I really like that where you said like we are meant to evolve in that where you get good at something and yes, you can like either keep working on it, maybe perfecting it, maybe, like adding in more tools, all of that. But then you evolve from that and say, okay, what's the next step? What can I add in? What can I take away? Like, where is this journey taking me?
yeah,
And I'm totally for that. And I do believe that that did happen for me here, where I kind of took that and I started breaking down those walls and then I realized that like yeah, like we have this gift, this opportunity as human beings to really explore life to the fullest.
yeah,
And we don't either A, allow ourselves or due to other circumstances, we get ideas or notions that we're supposed to be doing certain things, this way or that way, like you said, because it's easy, right? It's the
yeah,
easy, then we can coast. Or I can say, oh, that person, because my boss told me that I have to come in at 7, then I have to come in at 7.
yeah,
But how much, even though sometimes we yearn for that freedom, how much harder is it to say, oh my goodness, I have the ability to plan my days. I have the ability to do what I want. Where do you start? And that
yeah,
and that's where I see possibility where I'm like, yes, let's like utilize, especially with expressive arts, it's very much like person centered. It's very much like you start with what you have and then you build on that.
yeah,
Right? And the fun thing about it is it's very much encouraged to explore. Just explore out of curiosity, just ask.
yeah,
And even in that, like I remember one of the most simplest exercises that I remember doing is I think they had us like draw with our non-dominant hand, which for me would be the right hand. But even in that, I was like, wow, look at that. Like I can do this and I can do that. And that started stirring possibility. And with possibility comes hope. And if you have hope, that actually propels you to move forward or move sideways, wherever you're moving, but you're moving.
yeah,
And that's the whole like basis of my understanding for expressive arts is you're moving different parts of yourself, whether it's I mean, not only for mental health, but it also enriches your creative practice too. Like if you're a musician and you know that for you producing music comes, okay, I need to write first and then something will come, or maybe I hear a tune first. But then even switching that up, being like, okay, what happens if I hear a tune? I wonder what the tune would look like. Let me draw it. Let me use color. And
yeah,
then drawing it, and who knows what that might bring, right? That can just lead you to another layer of that creative process. So that's where I see a lot of, like you said, especially right now with COVID, like, yes, it's been quite unfortunate of everything that's been going on. And at the same time, it has given people the opportunity to just pause and be like, wait, am I living to live or am I working to live? Like,
Yeah,
where am I in this, right?
yeah, yeah,
And whose flow am I in? Am I in my own flow or am I in somebody else's?
yeah. And it's like no matter what you believe in this world, we don't really know what happens after we're here. You know what I mean? Like nobody knows unless you've been there, right? So it's like, but it's just like for that you only live once is a legit thing if you think about it in a way like that's just what we know. So if we're taking our whole lives and just doing it by the book to coast, like you said, like I nobody wants to be that person that's on their deathbed thinking about how they did nothing. That's brutal. And I've talked to with like us, like me and Aaron and Roberta, starting this venture. Like so many people that we are connected to, our family, friends, are just like, how do you guys just do it? And like my parents were like, oh, that like after a while they were like, oh, we're proud of you. Like we wish we used to would have invested when we had money invested
Mm,
into like real estate or something that we always thought we should do. And then we're like, no, we shouldn't spend the money. And if they did, they'd have property, you know, how much property is up here. They'd have a lot of money. And it's just like, it's always the what if, what if, what if. And sometimes you just got to be spontaneous and do things. You'd be amazed what happens. And it just, yeah, it's been nice seeing people kind of taking what they actually love and
mm,
turning it into like not even I wouldn't even call it work. That's why I don't like it. It's not work.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
turning what they love into what they do finally, like do it at a full time basis or even just a part time basis. I've seen a lot of it since we've opened this place up, and it's just really nice to see. Back to you though, you also work like within the psychedelic industry.
Yes,
You said you like back,
personally.
yeah, personally you tried it out. There used to be a harsh stigma on it, obviously, like just
Yes.
drugs in general. But it's kind of opened up a lot in the last few years,
Mm.
where you're hearing more and more like regular. I'm saying regular because nobody's regular, but regular people using like microdosing mushrooms or
Yes.
just take for so many different reasons. Like depression being a huge one. Like I know so many people that have like sworn by psychedelic mushrooms when it comes to like basically getting over something massive in your life. What made you like so interested in that? Was it trying them, or were you interested before you tried them?
Um, well, that's a great question.
Mm,
We're going deeper.
yeah,
Um, yeah, personally, I would say because I think from the get-go, I was never that kid. You know what I mean? Like I was never that one that was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna try this." I was like that kid that just happened to be around.
yeah,
And then I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll take it." And through that, uh, I'll put this on one of my really closest friends. She really like guided me, I guess, in that. And so I mean, I guess we're gonna go deep here.
yeah,
So I remember the first time I tried LSD, and so I wouldn't say that it was intentional. Like I didn't have a plan for it. It wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go in and I'm just gonna like work on myself. It was totally recreational. But like the insights that I got from taking it were the most profound things that I could have done. And gosh, it was even before my mid 20s.
yeah,
And so to say that in that experience, I just remember having these like when I felt so disconnected from everything. I think also being a child of just like immigrating and moving so much, there was a there was a part of me that just was jaded of everything because it was easier. You know what I mean? Like especially when you're moving and you're just constantly meeting new people and this. I just got jaded and I was like, yep, this is easier because I don't have to deal with the emotion.
yeah,
And so why try? And I just cut relationships. So I started to cut relationships really easily. And I kind of like navigated the world like that until until I was going to oh gosh, I was going to EDC back in the day, and my friend was just like, "Listen, you can try this, you can try that." And mushrooms, weed had always been around me, but I was never interested, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
I was never interested because it wasn't part of my thinking, it wasn't part of my mindset. I was definitely on another realm of I just want to like live and not attach myself to anything,
Yeah.
period. And then my friend goes and introduces me to LSD, and I was like, "What does this do?" You know, da da da. Okay, I trust you. Probably should have done more homework back then, but I didn't. And so when I took it, I remember we were out in the desert and we were just seeing people dancing, and I remember I I just remember like sitting and starting kneeling and doing meditation and having the most profound like love for everybody, which was very rare for me.
Yeah.
Growing up, like my family knows me, but they're like, "Yeah, you weren't very expressive." I don't know
Yeah.
what happened. And I just remember connecting to that and seeing people for who they were, like seeing them for their humanity. And somehow that got like reconnected back into my own mind. And I just remember feeling like this immense sense of gratitude towards like just even being on this earth and being able to experience this. And for the that night, in between dances, I would always go back to that spot a little bit removed from people, and I would just keep meditating. And I was like, okay, there's something here.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, my first experience to connecting to something bigger. Um, Outside of that, I didn't do any more of that for a while. I kind of left it. I have taken other like stuff. I've tried MDMA, ecstasy, like all that all that stuff. But the what I got with LSD was something that I knew I couldn't recreate. It wasn't something that I could recreate.
Yeah.
And that was one of the most transformational experiences that I had. And I remember keeping that in my, like, I still, if I close my eyes, I still can go back to that and I can see it and I can see the people just enjoying.
Yeah.
And for me, that made me realize, like, okay, whatever we're doing in this world, like, whether we believe in something or not, like you said, beliefs are beliefs, but at the end of the day, experiencing life. What a
Yeah.
gift to just like wake up every day and be like, holy shit, you know, like I can go and, you know, if I wanted to go run a marathon, I can train for that and
Yeah.
try. Of course, with my own limitations, like I'm 5'2", you know, probably won't be like in the, you know, the top marathon runners, but I can like start and
Yeah.
try something. And that kind of shifted my mindset then. And I think from there, eventually I did microdosing with mushrooms for a while here in Canada. For me personally, it didn't work, but I think that also connects to like if you've had PTSD or anything like that. I wasn't aware of those things back then. And so I do believe that it is important if there are people who are going to be doing this or you're going to be doing this to have a network of support. And whether that's like therapists, whether somebody who's like checking in on your history, especially if you had some sort of PTSD, some sort of experience where it's held in your body.
Yeah.
Just because for me personally, when I did take mushrooms, it only exacerbated my anxiety.
Yeah.
So I can feel it in my body, and then it heightens it so much that it actually takes away from my experience and
Yeah.
connecting with people.
Yeah. I
And
can
that,
see that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
It's definitely every mind state. Like you think you like a lot of people I know that have taken it and been like thinking they need it at that point because they're in a super depressed state. If something triggers them to think about what they're depressed about while they're taking the mushrooms, that could be just like the worst time of your life. At the same time, like if it's controlled, there's also different kinds, I guess, of different kinds of psychedelic mushrooms that can do different things. And I don't know much about the industry. I know a lot of people that are interested in it and people that are involved in the industry. So it's something that I've seen both extremes of basically where some people have just sworn that it saved them, and then other people it just doesn't mix well with them, and it's
Yeah.
understandable. Everybody's different. That can go for pretty much any drug, alcohol, marijuana, anything. People react differently,
Yes.
but I, what always like I've never been much of a psychedelic user, but what I always appreciated about it is almost like a connection to the dream world, because there's
Mm.
something about dreams to me that are just like it doesn't make sense, but they're so real, if that makes sense. I don't know how
Oh
to
yeah.
explain it, where it's like it does. There's so many studies, scientists trying to figure out what the hell dreams are,
Yes.
the whole alternate reality stuff, their whole dimension stuff. Uh, what doesn't like what I know about LSD is a lot of people compare it to almost a dream world where it seems like you can do anything you can do in your dreams, but safely if you're smart about it. Like it's not like
Mm.
you're going jumping off a bridge or something, unless you're taking way too much. But
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something you're connected to is your dreams and everything, because I come like as a person who went to
Yes.
school for music production, also songwriting and stuff. When I can have a full on dream about a song that I've never written,
Mm.
uh, a beat behind that song that I've never written or made, and it's great lyrics, it's happening, like it's in my head and it's flowing. Like, but if I tried to do that right now, I would fail miserably. It just doesn't make sense that your brain can do that in a different, almost like a different world. But if you tried to do it in your everyday life, it's a
Correct.
no go.
Yes. And that's very much, I mean, there's a lot of study on transformational experiences where it doesn't necessarily have to be through psychedelic medicine. Psychedelic medicine just facilitates that, let's say. So, of course, if there are certain places that you can't get to because of that, like either trauma or just um, chemical imbalances, then yes, a psychedelic medicine will facilitate that to open it up and kind of, as one of my coworkers was saying last week, they show you what's possible. They open the door, but you still have to do the work. You know, the integration happens not during the journey, but like afterwards. And really, like you mentioned, even with dreams, we talk about transformational experiences like, oh, if I like take this, mushroom and do this, I'm going to have an amazing psychedelic experience and my transformation is going to be there. Transformational experiences are happening every day. And that can be like you said, when you're, so I'm assuming because I'm not a musician, but when you're in flow, right? That you're like in the music and you're hearing the beats and something happens to where it's like you leave, like time no longer exists,
Yeah.
your physical space no longer exists, and then you're just one with that beat, with that rhythm. Boom, right there. That's a transformational experience. And then you come back out of it. You're like, okay, I just entered a whole different altered like consciousness space, and then I can be here. It's the same with the dream world in that sense. For me personally, I do believe that those are the dream world. There are alternate worlds that we get to explore every night, and then we just come back to this one.
Yeah.
So if there are, of course, and they inform each other, right? So if there's something that comes through dreams, that could be a download for you, where you're like, boom, I know exactly where I need to go, or like all of a sudden you visualize this song or how this beat's supposed to go.
Yeah.
That's the transition right there. That's your transformational experience, and now you integrate that in your waking life
Yeah.
and you come back to that. And so that's happening on a constant basis, and you see that through not only psychedelic medicine, but excuse me, people who do ah, it's this tea. Just kidding. Um, People who do like lucid dreaming or who like are really disciplined with that. Uh, Performers, athletes, when they're when they're training or they're doing like if you've done long distance running, when you're in flow, that's a transformational experience, and then you're coming out of that. So it's different ones, or like extreme sports where you hear they went I don't know, to the highest mountain and all that. The adrenaline that you're experiencing, the change in weather, all of that, those create altered states of consciousness as well. And so it's not necessarily just with psychedelic medicine, as
Mm,
we like to think. It can be, as we would call it, everyday reality. But it's how we choose to kind of switch those glasses and then decide to go in through those doors. Okay, I'm going to explore here a little bit, maybe play, have fun, come back. Now, how do I integrate this?
yeah,
And that's where that whole, what you were talking about, that whole idea of evolving, and we're doing it, right? And especially, well, this is not so much with expressive arts, but with my studies in Buddhism, like we're dying and living every day.
yeah,
And that can come up in if a new thought comes up and, whatever you knew before now gets cleared because this new thought
yeah.
confirms whatever you needed to confirm. Boom, that's done.
Had to make hard drive
And you
space.
exactly
Yeah, yeah.
make your dream space.
And as much as we want to think we can remember everything, it's pretty difficult. And you forget. I mean, the older you get, the more you forget. And I think that has a lot to do with learning more. As long as if you keep learning, you're going to be pushing a lot of stuff out of that brain. I like, and we should. Everybody should continue learning. But I think I think that, like, I keep talk generations, but I really do think this generation almost has to adapt fast and kind of change because technology is so crazy and everything is so crazy. We're learning more. So much has come out in the last 20 years compared to like the 50 years before that. Like, it was just like, it's it, we're like the generation before internet, but we got it
Yeah.
like when we were kids still. And it's just since the internet where we've gone from there, it's insane. So where I think, like, when it comes to psychedelic drugs or just I'll talk about dreams again. Different studies on them and stuff. We're gonna find out so much in our lifetime about all this, and with people in our like generational age gap, like our age starts taking over like big positions within companies, politics, everything. Where a lot of these restrictions that have been put on the world really are going to start being lifted a lot and just more freely, and people can do like basically the stuff that was been told to us that's been unsafe forever is been perfected in a way where it's safe, completely safe, and everybody knows it. And I think that's you're seeing that with legalization of marijuana a lot. You're seeing those people that were like before, like there's no way because
Yeah.
their government and their religions, their jobs, everybody's telling them how bad it is for you, and they legalize it, and you're seeing more and more people using it for the right reasons, like
Yes.
just the anxieties or just pain. Like popping pills your whole life from being in pain is probably the worst. As a person who knows a lot of people that have had painkiller addictions, they should go smoke a joint, and you'll see like one's way worse for you than the other. And
Yeah.
where I think we're starting to know that like there is natural ways to remedy such either minor or major things. And uh, I don't know why the last 100 years of human civil, it's all about like money, and it doesn't matter if it's the best for people. It's like, okay, let's pump them filled with anxiety medications because they're depressed or they have bad anxiety, and it's just like, no,
Yeah.
that messes with so much more than you know. Like, they don't really tell you that.
100%. I
Yeah,
was just talking to Roberta a few days ago about this, where because of all the transitions I was doing here, I mean, I've always had anxiety. I think that's just inherent. Like I call that like, is that just part of like my family? I don't know. But it was never to the point where like I was breaking down, having panic attacks, to the point where I couldn't even go to work. And I was like, what is going on with me? This is ridiculous. Like I was blocked. I know that I was going to school because I needed like to finish this program. I know that I was doing certain things, but I started getting anxiety, and there was like other factors in there too, like just personal relationship factors that kind of influenced the situation. But in that, I was always like very, like my mindset was very clear. Like, okay, I'm gonna get through this, and I'm people who know me, I tend to be quite stubborn. Like when I set my sight on something, or I can be very ambitious with what I want. and I just go and I go with it as much as I can. But this was the first time that I broke down and I couldn't move. I can't explain it. Like my mind was clear as day. I was good, but my body started to break down. So I started actually getting back pains to the point where I could kind of work like maybe 4 to 5 hour shifts. And I don't think I ever told anybody about this. Like I know my schooling had to know
Yeah.
because I was very much delayed on a lot of my projects. But through it all, I don't know if it was because I was like working, studying, and then on top of that, like trying to like make a life here and all these things, all these pressures, like you said, everything's moving so fast that my mind was there, but my body was breaking down from it, from the stress, from the anxiety, to where those 4 or 5 hour shifts, I would go back to the house and I would just lay in bed for like, and not lay in bed like sleeping. I was doing stuff like I was on the computer. I was doing, just my body hurt so much
Yeah.
because the like my nerve system was just my yeah, it was just like intense back pains, um, to the point where it hurt so bad I couldn't go to sleep. I started getting headaches, and I was like, something's wrong. And I went into the system here, and I was like, okay, this is my situation. This is what's going on. I don't know what to do. I get massages. I'm trying, but I think it's the cold as well. Like I was trying to think of so many things here. Also, the change in climate, like lack of sun.
Yeah.
I'm used to being in a very warm, sunny place.
Yeah.
And so that started to change my whole just physical health in general. But then in that, my mental health started to deteriorate. And I
Yeah.
couldn't think. I was really slow with certain things. My anxiety was way too high, where I was even having panic attacks if I had to go to the grocery store. It was really bad.
Yeah. It sounds
And
brutal.
it was just, yeah, like I I'm thankful that I went through it because now I know how like just how important mental health is.
Oh
And
yeah.
like you said, there's just enjoying having fun, like having a good laugh.
Yeah.
But in that, I was so desperate that I went to the doctor and they had it was so I was so surprised actually. They like it was so easy for them to administer. It wasn't Prozac, but it's like the generic form of it.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Yeah, let's start you on I think like the basic dosage is like 200." And I was like, "No, no, no, you don't, like I'm really sensitive. Can you bring it down?" They're like, "This is as slow as we can go." And I'm like, "Okay, well,
Yeah.
sure." And I was like, "Fine, if this is gonna help me like at least finish my tasks, then I'll take it." And I did. And I just and this is as I was explaining, like this is my own belief, but I could perform, I was good, I could do things, but I had a loss of soul. Like I
Yeah.
was not connected to myself. I stopped caring about people. My emotions went out the window, but I was a decent human being performing in society, which I think
Yeah.
that's what was okay
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah.
And I did it, but I kept thinking like this is wrong. I feel so like I don't find joy or laughter in anything anymore.
Yeah.
What's going on? And slowly I started to realize like it's medicine.
Yeah.
And I should have tapered it down because I think that's what you're supposed to do usually, but I was like, no, I can't do
Just
this
getting off
anymore.
of it.
Yeah, I like basically I like stopped working for a week and I just stayed home and went through the weirdest withdrawals ever. Like,
It's,
yeah,
I,
mind perception was off, but I'm so glad because as soon as I stopped taking it, it was like boom, I was back.
yeah.
And I could feel it and I vowed to myself that I was like, I will never go through that again. That
Yeah.
is like how are we doing this to people and thinking that they're okay from the outside and then we get so surprised when like 10 months down the line they kill themselves or
Yeah.
something.
It's I think mental health in the past was just if you had any issues, it
Mm,
was they wanted the quick fix for you and to keep you working and stuff because it was really that mindset. Like I said, it's always been work, work, work. And North America has been just work oriented, that family last almost, where it's like just go do your job, make
mm,
money, come home. And it's not until recently that they've kind of put mental health in the forefront because that honestly, man, if you get sick with any major thing, even minor thing, if you get the flu, you get COVID, you get cancer, if you are in a bad mind frame, there is such a bigger chance that you're going to suffer from it or either die from it than if even if you have a terminal cancer and you look at it positively and like I'm going to beat the hell out of this fucking cancer. Those people, like, I'm not saying they always do, but they either fight it longer or beat it because it's all a mental like state. It's when you give up and you
Mm,
just like are just done and
mm,
it you you don't have any give. You just it's absolutely brutal. Like it's just absolutely the biggest. It's messed up. So like I really think now it's awesome to see that people are realizing that you can't just throw a drug at somebody and
mhm.
just be like, okay, you're not going to be yourself, but at least you won't be depressed. And it's like, well, you kind of are because you're not your normal self. Like every, it's like no, it's DNA. Like it's like how you're supposed to be. Like it's not. It's affecting you. It is like making you not as active, not as like you don't have the energy to go work out. I know so many people have taken anxiety medications. Like at least I'm not depressed, but I put on 70 pounds, and it's
Yes.
just like so. I think now it's finally gotten to a point where people like look into their actual patient or who they're working with and just being like, okay, what's best for these people? It's not just a, like every shoe or all size fits all.
Yes.
It's such a everybody is so different in so many different ways, and it's nice to see that we're finally understanding that because I feel bad for the past. Like I feel bad for people that just like especially like when they were just it was like trying drugs and like, oh yeah, this we think this is gonna help, and it's just like, oh yeah, they're not depressed, it works, but it can do this to their like their organs. It can do this to their mental state. It can. I've heard things of like brain like certain drugs like anxiety medication. I forget which one it is where it actually like drains your brain fluid or something. Like it's like these weird things like
Yeah.
that they don't realize there's a lot of stuff like I know LSD is created in a lab and stuff or whatever, but when it comes to there's natural remedies that are
Yes.
there's a reason why they're there. That there's got to be if no matter what you believe,
Mm,
if something grows out of our ground that uh, that is meant to be consumed in some way. Like, there's no reason why a mushroom that is not psychedelic to a mushroom that is psychedelic. Like, how did people know this back in the day? No, it was they were both supposed to be consumed in different ways. That's my personal opinion. And when you look into like you look into like different cultures in the past, how they
correct.
use mushrooms and like I actually this is one crazy thing. Like I know Mayan culture used mushrooms a lot,
Yes.
but the Vikings actually use mushrooms a lot. What people don't realize, what's so brutal and how brute they were, was that they're like the only civilization in the history of this, like for all the studies that I've looked at, that were they would actually take mushrooms to get violent. Like they would take mushrooms before they'd go to war, and then they'd have like almost like a psychedelic, like a positive trip killing people, but that was just
Interesting.
their lifestyle. That was how they were, and so looking into that, how they did it in because it was like their brutality was their religion. It was like how they lived. That what they did would bring them to their heavens, right?
Mm.
And they would take these things, and then you hear about most cultures took them for like peaceful things or like to see what can help them or save
Yeah.
them. And you ever watch The Beach? The movie The Beach with Leonardo
So long
DiCaprio?
ago. Yeah.
He like he has like an epiphany because he takes a bunch of mushrooms in the bush pretty much when it's a great movie.
I'll have to rewatch it.
Yeah,
I was
but
way too young.
yeah, no, I love talking to you. I love having you here as a member. Like I just think you're great to have here. Like just great personality, and I I didn't know what you did until recently. Like I didn't know what you're into, or what you did for. I'm not like I'm not. I'm weird. I just that's not what I talk to people about. I talk to people about what they do for a living every day on these podcasts, but if I know you, that's not what I talk to you about. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when I found out that you were in that industry, I was pretty like I like blown away because I think it's just it's on the.
Were you expecting me with
I didn't know
like
what to.
fuchsia
I didn't
colored
think.
hair and maybe
No,
like
no, not.
levitating?
No, I don't. I was not. I don't picture anything. I just didn't. I didn't even think about what you did. That wasn't even like a thought in my head. I just like. I'm like, she's a super rad chick. She's really nice. Really, just great to be around. And when I found this out, like I mean, like I said, I know some people in the industry. You met Mike.
Yes.
My sister-in-law has one of her best friends is like he dedicated his whole life to psychedelics. Like that's,
Mm.
I think he calls himself the psychedelic professor. I don't know. He does like online videos about it, and that was a kid who was extremely smart growing up, was always great in school, but tried them for himself too, and realized the like positives that it could have, and
Yes.
the science behind it. If you're doing it in a safe like
Yes.
that's the problem with any drugs is you don't know where if you don't know where you're getting it from, it could be the worst time of your life. I've seen that happen on like personal levels where
Hmm.
it's not good for everybody, and it like could really mess up your mental
Yes.
state for the rest of the time.
Yes.
But I don't know all your background story, like everything, but the fact that I think you shifted into a super life of positivity from a part. It sounded like you were a pretty dark place at one point.
Yeah, but like that, so that's the, I guess that's what I'd like to highlight because it's not like, it's not, I mean, you see me, right?
Uh,
And like you said, like I'm not like wearing rainbow colored hair or like, you know, coming up in like hippie gear or anything
uh,
like that. So I think that's where there's like a stereotype to it.
yeah, there's a very big stereotype to it.
And likewise, I can also see like when I was in those dark spaces, I looked like the most regular, average looking person that you would never think. Like I would say I was smart, but not like I wasn't an overachiever in school, but I was the one that would show up and do this and do that. And I was always there, if that
Yeah,
made
I
sense.
hear
Like,
that. I'm the same.
yeah, in that sense, like, okay, and I generally always got along with everybody.
Yeah,
Like nobody ever had anything bad to say. But in it wasn't like I was like, oh, my life is, horrible, and why am I not having a happy time? I just felt like there was a sense of loss somewhere. And for me, I do attribute that a little bit to having moved so much and being like, well, coming from Mexico and then in the US, kind of like almost like spearheading my family in a sense with just like figuring out school life and then like translating like things from like English to Spanish and having to like go through that. It kind of builds a sense of pressure from the beginning since you're young. And I was always very like diligent and responsible with those things, but there was never a time to just play. Like that got lost somewhere. And I think that's where that sense of loss started to happen. And I was just like, okay, like I know that I'm well and I know that I have a good family and I know that I'm like okay, but I'm just okay.
yeah,
I'm not living life fully, like I'm not fully connecting to anything. So what's happening? And then lo and behold, like through friends, through, like influences, like you mentioned, perhaps like at the time they weren't the most contained experiences. And I do acknowledge them. Like some of them, I was like, oof, man, I definitely needed more containment around that. But I'm glad that I went through it as well because I realized like, okay, I see possibility. I see the future. And
yeah,
if I see that, then I know I can change it. I can change whatever my surrounding is right now and continue. And that's really like where my ambition just started coming through. And then, yeah, for now, just like realizing, okay, I know that personally these things worked for me and I know that they're out there now. How do we bring, like you said, that level of support, that network that, yes, it should be contained, it should be integrated because that's the last thing you want to do. Like have somebody go out so far out, but then how do you bring them back to this because you still have to live in this reality, right? In these altered, I call them, they're different spaces of consciousness. This is just one that we have chosen to live in,
yeah,
and that's like socially accepted.
yeah, yeah.
But we're navigating them every day through dreams, through like that sense of flow when you're doing exercise, when you're doing meditation, when you're doing music, when you're and that's where the expressive arts comes through, where when you're involved in that, that's connecting you to whatever that gift is, that talent, you're there. You That's all you need,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And yeah,
That's just yeah. I definitely 100% agree with everything you pretty much say. So yeah, I we can't go too long. I could talk to you forever. I feel like I gotta have you on the show again or just another show because I think you are so interesting in a great way. Like
thank
just
you.
like it just you have yeah, you can tell you have stories. You have passion for what you do. That's what really I think everybody needs to have. If you're living life, you have to do what you're passionate about. And I can tell you have passion for everything that you do. Um, do what you have your company, right? You say you're
Yeah, so that was my risk, my personal risk of, okay, now I want to bring something into the world. And through COVID, I was like, all right, let's do it. Let's set it up. Let me create an LLC. And I did, which it's there. It's called Alkehmia Synergetic Arts Experiencing.
yeah,
And I basically blend expressive arts with life coaching, and then I bring in my own Buddhist philosophy into it. Um, but yeah, it's essentially around that, just exploring identity, belief, that sense of belonging, all those things that make, that should be natural to tap into, but yet they're the hardest. Like they're the hardest things to connect to sometimes. And I blend that in through I've done expressive arts therapy workshops, I've done educational workshops, I've facilitated different sessions. They have been both online and in person. Most recently, of course, they've been online. One of them was about remembering our ancestors, and so I do pull a lot from that as well. Like for me, that's very much there is a connection to that. Whatever ancestors you're connected to, right?
yeah,
Because it goes back to what you were saying about previous generations. Like in order to move forward, we got to know where we're coming from,
yeah,
because then either one of two things: we remember that gives us a grounding, a foundation, and then that can propel us to go forward in whatever way that we wish. Or second, it shows us like, hey, my ancestors, these previous generations did this and this happened, there were some errors, how can I learn from that so I can, you
yeah,
know
yeah,
make the trip better,
yeah.
essentially.
Well,
Yeah,
how can we find out more, like social medias or websites you want to plug today, so people can find out more
sure.
about you? What?
Hopefully by this time Amber will have my website
Okay,
up and running to its top notch, because I tried doing it myself and
that's so much work.
so much work. I'm not the best at WordPress. But on Instagram, I'm Alkehmia, so that's Alkehmia.
Okay,
And then my website is just alkehmia.com, so same thing,
cool,
www.alkehmi.com.
cool.
And that's pretty much it. I am not the best at social media.
That's
Yeah.
good. That's not the most fun place, but yeah, I'll put a graphic up with all those contacts for you. But yeah, if you want to come on again, ever come on again because I love talking to you. I'm very interested in the field that you're working in, and it's yeah, great having you on.
Mm.
Thank you for being on. Thank you all for watching. This has been another edition of PoCommunity. I'm Mike Arboy. She is Estephania Solis. Have a good one.
Bye, everyone.